All right. Well, I guess we'll start because I don't know who else is coming, but a class. Okay. So thanks for coming, all three of you. It means a lot to us that you would sacrifice your Friday afternoon. Okay. So this is the lab, which I think you've already seen. You guys were all here on Thursday, right?
Huh?
Yesterday for class? Okay. So you know how this goes. You already wrote this part.
Go ahead.
Was that a question? No. Okay. So you know what that event looks like. This lab, you're going to write the consumer for the driver to handle that. And you're also going to write another generator and another consumer for the driver to send events back to the flower shop. Does that make sense?
Wait, so there's more than one generator?
Yeah, there's a generator here that you wrote last time, and you're going to write another one over here. It's basically the same, so you can use the same code. And then it raises a bid available event, which is basically the driver saying, I'll take the delivery. Okay, the other things are you're going to use Foursquare, but not the same way we did last time. We're going to use their push API. I think they call it the real-time API. And what that does is once somebody's OAuth'd into your application, it will push all their location updates to you. So it's like an event. The syntax is a little different, but it's basically the same idea. So you'll have one consumer here that handles that as well. And then the other piece of it is Twilio, which is using SMS to talk to the driver. And when the driver responds to an SMS to send it back to you, that comes in as an event from Twilio. Again, its syntax is a little different, but we're going to talk about all those things. Any questions?
So is that thought like a controller for driver? Should be like conceptualized in that way?
A controller for the drivers?
Well, it's like there are going to be lots of drivers,
Right.
at least stretching that.
Right.
So,
There are lots of drivers.
And then like a driver alone is just like, let's say, a truck there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Who only like texts, who only sends SMS.
Right.
But there's also a website for driver, like a consumer event generator for that driver.
Yeah, this website is going to be multi-tenanted like the other one was, the flower shop site was. So you could have a bunch of different drivers that use the same website, but they've all got their own personal event network, as in Phil's terminology. So they each have an account on the site, and when they interact with it, it behaves differently than when somebody else interacts with it. But they're all drivers.
Okay, so there's a website, driver goes there and signs up, like creates an account.
Yep.
And then like maybe enters his phone number for SMS, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
And then there's like a different website for flower shop, and then flower shop owner would go and create an account there, right?
Uh-huh. Yeah, like we did before.
Okay.
And then the driver with his account on this website gets an ESL, and he can take that over and plug it into the flower shop's website. So that's where that piece comes in. Because last time we just used the example event consumer to just make ESLs just so we could see what happened. But this time your website has to generate those and listen to them.
So do we need to create a whole other website for the drivers, or can we just use this same website?
That's a good question.
Because it seems like it'd be like a waste to create a whole website that has all the same information as on the flower shop.
Kind of.
But there's
Yeah,
a difference
they're-
in what they do, right? But
Right.
because this has to actually generate ESL for the driver.
But you can generate an ESL and so forth on the same website.
Right, you could. So the idea is conceptually they're separate,
Yeah.
but you could write them on the same website if you wanted.
Because it seemed like if you wanted it this way, you'd have multiple driver sites for like a driver company or something.
Yeah.
Like a website for a driver company. And so forth. That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. So you could have as many drivers as you want, and they could each have their own website because they work for different companies.
Yeah.
Something like that. But they all talk the same protocol.
Yeah.
So because Yeah,
it's okay if we use it on the
that's
same
the point.
side.
It's a bad reason.
As long as you understand the conceptual separation there,
Yes.
then yes, that's fine.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about the events is it's everything's so loosely connected that you can do whatever you want with it. Cool. Any more questions about the overall structure? All right, so I'm going to talk about Foursquare and how that works with KRL, and then Reed's going to talk about Twilio. What languages do you guys want to use for this, just out of curiosity? Java, PHP. Okay.
I use Groovy, so like it's really Java.
Oh yeah, Groovy. Okay, so you guys weren't planning on using KRL
Oh, yeah.
For this one.
for this one.
For the consumers?
The consumers.
But
Okay.
I don't know where exactly it goes in, so that's why it's here. Like,
Good deal. All right, we'll tell you about KRL then. Should I do the Foursquare stuff first?
Yeah, if you want. I
I'll
mean,
do
or
the Twilio
you
stuff
could
first.
just explain the account, like creating Connect's account, and then the ECL, you can generate
Oh, yeah.
all that.
Okay,
all that
we'll do that stuff. Okay, so whenever you want, or right now if you have a computer, you can go to kinetics.com and click sign up, login. I think this is the sign up, and if the login is, you click on that one. But anyway, I just have mine linked to my Google account, so I'm just going to pick that. So then we come back here, and if you scroll down the page, it says Access App Builder. This is where you'll write your code. So these are all the apps that I have right now. I didn't build all of them. Some of them were shared with me. But let's see. If you go to this, you click on your account up here at the top, and this has a number. Is that the right number? That's not the right number, is it?
Yeah, that's your
Because mine is actually 3739.
All right. I don't know. Mine is
Oh, look, it does work. Okay, so so you go up here and click on this thing, and then at the end of this, there needs to be a link for this, but there's not yet. Anyway, you put
still in beta.
you
at
put
the moment.
tokens. This is still beta, so ostensibly we have Phil's permission to use this. Anyway, so this is how you make ESLs that tie into your personal event network. So Phil mentioned the Kinetics browser extension yesterday, which I have installed here. And this is what it looks like on my installed apps page. I don't have quite as many as he does. So all these ones that are installed will have events raised to them if they come in through this ESL, or the ESLs that I make here. So I've got one called Foursquare Test that I'm going to use to show how Foursquare works right now. So that's the token, and then you'll notice the URL has this stuff that's always the same, and then it has that on the end of it. We can actually go look at the Evented API specification, and this URL structure will be the same as what they've got here. Somewhere. Actually, I don't know if they talk about that. Well, anyway, it's the same stuff. So I'm going to go to Foursquare and click on My Apps up here. You guys did this in Lab 1, so I've already got this one. I'm going to go click on this. Now, when you go to edit this consumer, there's a box right here that lets you turn on push notifications, and you want the second one for this lab. And then in this box, you'll paste that URL that you got from over here into that box, but put HTTPS in front of it because Foursquare requires that for the push API, and it still works with HTTPS. So you just do that, and then the callback URL. Oh, actually, so there's something I got to explain about this. Right at the end of it, you're going to put this stuff on. Fake ID is just a fake ID. I mean, it's just a piece of data that gets passed back and forth, but it doesn't have any intrinsic meaning, so you can put whatever you want there. But these last two pieces are the most important part. This is the event domain, Foursquare, and this is the event name, check-in. So, that's how it. That's how Foursquare is going to specify to Kinetics what the event name and domain are. Is from that piece of the URL.
So Kinetics does that, not necessarily Foursquare?
Right. Foursquare doesn't care what this URL is. Yep. So you could call that whatever you want, but Foursquare check-in happens to make sense for this situation. So
what's fake ID?
Fake ID is just what is it exactly? It's just
I don't think I know the exact definition of it, but I think it's to relate what the event is coming from, like to relate events together. But I'm not quite sure.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
so the event generator can put some ID in there, and then when the event consumer responds to that event, it will pass back the same ID. So that way the consumer and the generator can correlate which events came from where. But it doesn't really matter in this case because we're just accepting check-ins and storing it, so we don't care where they came from and what order they came in.
Oh, you care who they came from?
Well, that's the funny thing. We're not exactly using this like Foursquare envisions that we would. Their idea is that you would register this push URL for your one application, and then all the users that OAuth to that get their stuff pushed to that URL, and then you have to correlate it on your end to say this check-in was from this guy and this one's from this guy. But the way we're doing it, this URL is just for your personal event network, or yours or mine. So the only things that are going to get pushed there are for me, so I don't need to do any correlation.
So how do we determine who it's from?
I'll show you.
Okay.
That comes in the push. There's a section about who the user is. All right, so to get this to work, you have to OAuth into the application first. So I'm actually going to go back and make a new one so you can see how this process works from end to end. Actually, okay, so the callback URL is going to be localhost. And the reason is I need to do the OAuth dance, but I'm going to do it manually. So I'm just going to copy and paste URLs. So I need it to come back to localhost so I can do something with it. So you could do this the traditional way, or you can do it like I'm going to show you. In this case, for the push URL, since I'm the only one that's ever going to be OAuthed into this application, this works nicely because I can just do it myself. Okay, so we have this one. There's the callback URL. So I'm going to go to the docs and find the URLs that I have to do for the OAuth dance, which are right here. So I'm going to take this, copy it over here. Alright, so the registered redirect URI is localhost. And it has to match exactly what you told Foursquare. Response type is code, I leave that the same. This, okay, that is going to come from here. And then I got to make this all one line. And then I'll copy that and go paste it over here and run it. And it should come back. Okay, so it's asking, do you want to allow this? I say yes. I'm already logged in. Okay, then it redirected to localhost, and here's the code. So I need that for the next one, which looks like this. So I'm going to come over here. The code right there is this. The redirect URI is localhost. And then these I have to get from here again, the client ID and the client secret. I make them all one line. And then I copy that and run it here. And then I should get back a JSON with the access token. And you don't have to keep track of this because it's a push URL. So it's just going to push everything anyway. Cool. The OAuth dance is done. Alright, any questions on that? How that works? I'm going to put this on YouTube, so if you didn't write all that down,
Okay.
you can find it again. Alright, let's go back here. So once you do that, then you can go change the callback URL to this thing instead, which is just the ESL that I got from Kinetics without all the extra stuff on the end of it. Alright, that's it. So now what I'm going to do is I'll go into Kinetics and write an app to handle the Foursquare events that are going to come in. So I'm going to come over here to App Builder, and I've already got one written, so I'll just walk you through it. Alright, so here is what I was talking about earlier. At the end of the URL I said the domain is Foursquare and the event name is check-in. Can you read that, or should I reverse it? Is that easier? Okay. Okay, so when it comes in, it's going to have an attribute called check-in. You know, I ought to show you what it looks like first. Let's do this. I'm going to use request bin to show you. I did this one earlier today, just so you can see what it looks like. So when Foursquare pushes something, this is the format of the request. So there's three attributes: check-in, secret, and user. So secret is so that you can verify. Let's see. Go back. You can verify that it actually came from Foursquare, because only Foursquare and I know this secret. So if that is present in the request, then I can be sure that it came from Foursquare, because this is an HTTPS connection as well. So user, you were asking earlier, how do you know who it's from? That's in this section. So this was just a test push, so the user is Jimmy Foursquare. That's how you tell. There's an ID there too, if you want that. Then this big mess has a bunch of stuff in it. The part that we're going to be interested in for this lab is the latitude longitude of the check-in, which is right here inside the location piece of the JSON called lat and long. So what I'm going to do over here is I say get that check-in attribute, which is a piece of JSON, and then I call decode on it. And what that does is parse the JSON into an object that you can manipulate in KRL. Excuse me. Then the next line I say take that check-in object now and pick, which is this expression is what's it called, JSON path. If you've ever used XML with XPath, it's kind of a similar thing. $ means, well, this means just find the first occurrence of something called location in the document, in the JSON object. And then underneath that thing there should be another thing called lat. Does that make sense? And since we only need those two things, that's pretty simple. So the next one just looks like that. This is spelled LNG. There's no O in there. That one tripped me up for like half an hour today. Okay, so I've got those two things. Then what I'm going to do, I don't really want to do anything right now. I just want to store those. So I have a no-op here as the action part of the rule, which just says don't do anything. And I think this goes in the logging if you want to put a logging message there. But if the rule fired, which means this event occurred, and I have these two pieces of data, then I'm going to go put those into entity variables, which Phil talked a little bit about on Thursday. Entity variables are persistent storage that's tied to a particular user. So if I'm the one using this app, then it'll store latitude and longitude in the entity variables for me, but if Reed installs this app and runs it, it'll store them in different entity variables for him. And I don't have to manage the database as the programmer. It does all that for me, and we've got multi-tenancy. That, yeah, it's, I don't have it anymore. This thing, the token, is that what it's called? The token there? That's tied to my account because I generated it from my account. So if anything ever comes in on that URL, it already knows who it's for. Yeah, good question. All right, so what I've done is Foursquare came in and said, there's a new check-in for this guy, here's his latitude and longitude, and I said, great, and I stuffed it away in the entity variable, and then I'm done. That's all I do right there. Okay? It is called when, in this case, the only condition is select when Foursquare check-in. Yeah. So if Foursquare calls that URL that I gave them, then it's going to come in as this event. So it fires. That's what that means. It can also mean that you can have a condition here. And Phil showed us a few rules yesterday that had conditions on that, which was an if something, then do this. But there's no else branches in KRL. So in that case, if the rule had an if statement in it, if condition, then fired would only happen if the if condition was true, not if it failed. So anyway. All right, so now I've got latitude and longitude stored safely away until I need them. And for this example, what I'm going to do is write another rule that says when I run this on, when I get another event called location get, then I'm going to return the latitude and longitude in a string like this. So all I have to do is say go pull out the variables or the values of these two entity variables and assign them here, and then create a string that has those two things embedded in there. And then what this does is say return this piece of text as plain text. That's all, and this logs it. So to see that, we're going to click on this, which is send a test user push. And it says push sent successfully. That one looks like this. So the latitude and longitude should be the same as these. Then what I'm going to do, I don't remember, I think Phil showed this yesterday, didn't he? I can tell you how to install this if you're interested. So what I'm going to do is say that the domain is location and the type is get. And then I don't have any attributes. So I click raise event. And it comes back with that piece of text that I gave it, right there. So, from that you can imagine what you would do. And so instead of this location get thing, you're going to want to pull out the location when we get a delivery ready event. So what you do is the select rule for delivery ready would say go pull out the location and check it against the flower shop's location, tell me if that's within 2 miles, and if it is, then do something, otherwise do something else.
So do we have to store the flower shop in latitude and longitude?
You had to do that too, yeah. And I haven't quite figured out the best way to do that in KRL, but the idea is you put it in entity variables like that too. So, the latitude and longitude is not in the event, no. It would be handy if it were. But the...
So how does the value use the
Good question. Down here, you're going to have to go rework your flower shop a little bit. So when a driver comes to register an ESL, you give it back the latitude and longitude of the flower shop right then, as well as an ESL for it to talk to the flower shop, for the driver to talk to the flower shop. And then the driver has to take those three things and plug them back into his website, and it stores them on his account. Yes. So the driver now has his own database of these are all the flower shops I'm registered with, and this is how I talk back to them if I want to send them an event, and this is what its latitude and longitude is. And then you have to key that on the name of the flower shop or something. You can decide how you want to do that.
the driver actually goes and registers different websites, different browsers.
Right. Yeah.
They have a different browser.
Exactly. Yep. That is what I'm trying to represent here with these little databases. So you already know that the flower shop has a list of ESLs for all the drivers that have registered with it. And the driver is going to have a similar thing, all the ESLs for the flower shops that it's registered with, as well as a few other pieces of information like latitude, longitude. Yep. Does that make sense? So with that, I think you have all the pieces you need for this logic here when the delivery ready event comes in. You have the driver's location, you have the flower shop's location. Reed will talk about how to communicate with the driver through SMS. And then once you've made a decision, you just raise the bid available event back to the flower shop, and that's just like you did it before.
Wait, so a driver does a force per check-in,
Uh-huh.
and that information, I guess how the process works, knowing the latitude and longitude, how does that go?
The driver checks in with Foursquare.
Uh,
Foursquare records that in their own databases, whatever, and then it looks at all the apps that are registered for this guy to push to, which in my case is just that one that I showed you.
It's just the one side.
Right. So then Foursquare pushes the check-in event to this website, and then the website receives that event and stores the location of the driver, yeah, for whatever that check-in just was.
So how does the driver's website know about the bar outside of the longitude?
That's from the registration part that happened earlier. So that only happens once. The driver goes to register with the flower shop, and the flower shop says, cool, that's fine, here's my ESL and here's my latitude, longitude.
Okay, so the last one would be better now if we store the latitude longitude in the flower shop.
Right. So that's a piece you'll have to go add on. Yep. Cool. Any other questions about that? Foursquare stuff?
So all the drivers will be pushing, so they'll check in with Foursquare, and every time. So where does that get pushed to in the flower shop? Or does it just go to the site?
It just goes to the driver's site.
And so they're all given the same URL that it's supposed to?
No. Well, no. So the way we're doing it anyway, which isn't quite how Foursquare envisions it, this app is, well, so the URL that I gave it is going into my personal event network.
Yeah. So every driver's going to push to that?
No, every driver has his own.
Okay.
His own one of these.
Every driver has one of those?
Right.
Yeah, so you can go generate a new one. Like if you just go to the kinetics of tokens, you can just go create another ESL, right?
So these are their own generators?
This is a consumer.
Consumers.
Yeah, this URL is a consumer.
So you need one of those for every driver?
Every driver, yeah. To create ESLs? No, they don't, but I think that's in the works. This stuff's all pretty new. So. Yeah, this is a good question that I hadn't thought about before.
Yeah.
Because it.
Yeah, I was thinking.
Yeah, I hadn't thought of this.
Like they're only gonna have one Twilio account, Foursquare account.
Right.
So that's only gonna relate to one driver.
So. Right. Yeah, if you're doing it with Kinetics, that's how you do it. If you wrote your own website for the driver, then you'd probably I don't know. You might want to use this data to figure out this driver. This check-ins for this driver and this check-ins for this driver. That's a really good question.
Wait, so like
If you do it with Kinetics, then I guess you only really have one driver, so you don't. Right.
Wait, so how would you draw that out?
Wait. I know the answer to your question. Okay. If you were writing your own website, you would write this piece of it. Right, okay, that's what you're saying. So the driver registers and you go create some new URL on your site that acts as the consumer. But if you're writing it with KRL, that piece is already done for you. So this is sort of part of the driver website that you don't have to write because you're using KRL. So every driver logs in with his Kinetics account and creates an ESL for this and then gives that to Foursquare. Right. So I'm logged in here. So what I'm saying is I wrote the Kinetics app that does all the handling, but I can log in with my Kinetics account and Reed can log in with his and use the same code, but we've got different ESLs because we each have our own personal event network.
Can you see Brian and how this would work?
Yes. I think I'll draw this.
So it's more complicated than just saying, okay, driver signs up to a shop, pushes to Foursquare, and the next thing just left him off.
Well, that is it.
Yes, that's what the other parties are like actually creating the ESL for
Yeah,
So if you write the website yourself, then you have to do something like this.
what do you write the website yourself?
If you do it in PHP or Python or something, you do the driver website in that language instead of KRL, then you have to do something like this where you're generating a new URL for every driver.
But he's specifically talking about the consumer, because you're going to have a website that is a driver's site, right? But the consumer part will be in KRL. Does that make sense?
On that site.
Well, you're going to be using that site, right? But
Yeah.
your consumers your driver consumer will be in KRL.
Yeah. And it's going to handle all the drivers.
So what is the website, the driver's website doing for us?
It lets you create these, and it lets you store the flower shops ESL and latitude longitude.
And everything else is
Right. Yes. Everything else is in KRL.
So what exactly is your question?
Wait, so like I'm using my old website,
Okay.
Right.
and so the driver signs up, drives to a shop,
Right.
and we're gonna make it so that he can check in with Foursquare, right? And so we're gonna have the KRL on that site, right?
So what you'll do is, so let's just imagine me and Steve are drivers. We both have our own Kinetics accounts. We both go into our own Kinetics accounts, get an ESL, and then we go into your driver and we register your driver stuff. We're registering our ESLs, and so then they can send those events, right? And then the consumer
To what?
The flower shop gets in the events, right? Which you guys are kind of already doing, right? So each of us individually have registered with the flower shop. But then the other way around is you can have numerous flower shops, right, that can register the other way around, right?
Well, the driver goes to the flower shop to register, but there's information about the
Right.
flower shop that the driver has to.
Oh, right. And that's where the driver's website that's where that will be stored. Is that little bit of information?
So with that, then you don't have to deal with the because you will do that by yourself. So you will have a Kinetics account. You have
Right.
Yes, then you will remind us that, and you will fix the driver stuff. And I'll just store that.
Right.
You have to deal with it.
Right. Yes, I think so.
So creating your event signal URL, that's the driver shop. So what part
Right.
so we have to create the Kinetics app that handles receiving those
Uh-huh.
on our site, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And well, see, I'm envisioning it a little different than Reed is, but I haven't quite figured out how to verbalize that. It's the picture. Yeah. Well, okay. So how about I do it on here so it's actually in the screencast? All right. Okay. So let's see. So the way I'm thinking of it, this is my personal event network.
What's it do?
That's the Kinetics.
Let's see.
The Kinetics account.
That's my Kinetics account. That's a good way.
So
to
just call that your Kinetics account.
Yeah, but what does it do?
It's going to be consumed.
It lets me do this. It lets me manage which apps I have installed. Oh, come on.
But there's only one app that's handling all this, or the site, right?
Right, but so there's one piece of code, but I can install the app here in mine, and Reed can install it in his.
What do you mean in his?
So he
Is
logs.
a driver, or?
He's a driver, so we're both drivers.
Uh-huh.
And let's say you wrote the code. So I'm a driver, and I install your app in my personal event network here,
Okay.
and Reed installs your app in his personal event network.
So why do you need to? Okay, so why do you need to install multiple apps when it's all being done? It's supposed to be done like in cloud, in the sense where the site handles all that, right?
Right. So the difference is I'm envisioning the Kinetics platform as the driver site.
Okay.
So I'm a driver and I come in to let's see. What do? I do a couple things. I install the app, and then I go I generate an ESL to give to Foursquare, and I as the driver have to do the Foursquare app part. And then after that,
What is he using the OS for
right, right. So all that stuff that I was showing at the beginning, I was doing as the driver. So then I generate another ESL for the flower shop that I want to register with. And I go give that to the flower shop.
So this is all configuration. For the driver.
Right.
Right.
Are we doing all this manually?
I still see confusion on your face, man. What's the confusion?
I'm just not seeing like the process. I guess so. I understand that the driver uses that Foursquare to check in.
Right.
Well, the way it seems that the driver would just push the Foursquare, and the driver side would have that Foursquare information.
Right. So that you have to set that up, and that's this part.
And so why doesn't our site just handle all the pushing to the flower shop and so forth? Why does the driver need
Pushing
to-
what to the flower shop? Because we haven't set up the communication channel yet, so we can't do anything yet.
So why does the driver need the kinetics?
Well, the reason is the real compelling reason to use KRL is that it's a rule language and it handles the programming for handling the events is easier than using other languages, but this kind of setup at the beginning isn't very elegant with KRL, and that's where a lot of this confusion is coming from.
But why does the driver have to set up kinetics?
So
He doesn't. That's just like going to, if you do a traditional site for the drivers, it would just be like going to that site and creating an account there. It's the same idea. Just we're using the Kinetics platform instead of building our own.
So KRL is that personal event network for the driver. Does that make sense? So when you go make an account, that's one personal event network.
Okay.
KRL,
Okay.
and Kinetics.
So is that just consumer part, or-
The consumer and generator,
It can be both.
Okay.
yeah, it can do both.
So the whole cloud on the right is
Right. Yeah, so if we're thinking of this in KRL terms, this is a personal event network, this cloud right here. And you could also look at the flower shop as a personal event network if you wanted to write that piece in KRL. Well, even if you didn't, I mean, conceptually, these two clouds are personal event networks.
So why do we consider the consumer and generator different if it's all part of the network?
Well, they're just different roles. So the consumer is accepting events and the generator is raising events out of the network.
Does that make sense?
What about more?
I'm going to go try and solidify this and write a blog post or something. I'll let you know. But. All right. Anything else?
Go back to the research chart.
Yeah.
the app is using the URL login of the first one of the driver. And that app is actually contain the KRL. So you manually create.
Right. Yep.
So what's the flower shop that have like personal event network? How would the driver do it?
Good question.
Like, because not all systems are going to have a personal event network.
Right. Well, the flower shop is, you can think of it, the flower shop website that you already wrote, you can think of as a personal event network.
I'm just thinking of like
Right.
other systems.
Yeah, well, there has to be some way to raise events into the flower shop and get events out, receive events from them.
Yeah.
So, in that sense, just by itself, it's an event network. because otherwise the whole architecture breaks down. It wouldn't make any sense if you couldn't do those two things. Yeah.
For the cloud part, even if you add, you have to modify it and actually listen to the on the one that
Right. Yeah. You'll have to add that piece. You don't need much time to do that.
Yeah. That shouldn't be too much.
So does every driver have to create their own Foursquare?
Yeah. This way they do. Yeah. Yeah, it does kind of.
Yeah, that was the whole confusion. Like I was thinking that I would actually convert that for driver, but now I have to create
Right. So you could design it differently so that the like if you write the driver website as a traditional website, you could do the Foursquare piece, and then the drivers just have to OAuth to it, and then all the rest is taken care of. And then the push URL, you just correlate things on your end. And that's probably how you do it in real life, but this is a...
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I would just like come and create an account in my website, and then you don't have to do anything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And that would be a better...
That's the ideal way.
A better user experience
At
to
the
do it that
moment,
way.
it's not
Well,
so
it
much.
makes it faster for you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, really, you're the programmer, so you got to get it in the guts anyway. So, you know, it works.
Does this mean every cloud shop has to do the same exact thing?
No, they don't have to do the Foursquare piece,
Well, that.
but
They have to
but
create their own
the
tags.
rest of it would, if you wrote it that way, yes.
They have to create their own tags.
Well, no, somebody else could write the app, but they install the app in their network. Right. Dr. Winley had a good post about this the other day with some nice diagrams.
Which one are you trying to find?
The blog post you mentioned at Roots Tech about the office hours app.
Oh.
Oh, wait. Oh, here it is. This one. I think that's the one I want. Okay. So if you want a better explanation of this way of thinking about it, this blog post goes through a similar thing. He took the office hours app that we wrote, the on-call thing, and rewrote it to use personal event networks. So that explains these concepts we're talking about here. But this is the diagram he had for it. So why does my cursor disappear? Anyway, it's a similar thing. The class cloud would be like the flower shop, and the TA clouds are all the drivers, and they have different apps installed in their personal event network that handle various events and do things when those happen. So anyway, that diagram's in his blog post. Yeah. Do you want to talk about Twilio?
Talk about it for 10 minutes.
We got 10 minutes.
I'm just gonna. Can I write text in here?
That one.
It's like a weird format, but so. Do you know if this needs to be exactly like capitalized and everything?
John Shea is his name, so yeah. John. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So for the Twilio portion of it, you're going to want to first go to twilio.com and create an account. and then you'll want to send an email to this email with this subject line here, and then inside your email you just want to say what email you registered with Twilio at, and then they'll upgrade your Twilio account so you can have some money on there and do what you got to do.
It's gotta be attention.
Yeah, it has to have all that. Do you have that written down?
We can email it to you. Just shoot
Right.
us an email when you're ready.
Where's
to do the
the
part.
other?
So do this.
All right. So in Twilio, you can basically you're gonna get a number in Twilio, and then you'll get upgraded, so you'll have some money in your account, and then you can with Twilio you're gonna configure it by setting up these webhooks. I think can't you? Do you think you can do it with an ESL also? I haven't tested that. Oh, the module stuff, right? Right. Okay. So yeah. So you're gonna need to use what they call KRL calls webhooks, and this is kind of the format. Everything you'll pretty much want to do exactly the same, except with this part here. This is kind of the ID of the app that you're writing in KRL. And so whatever app you create, you'll just up at the top on the left, you'll just copy that and paste that right there. And then here you can pretty much put any name you want, because it's kind of the domain of where the event is going to be going. So you can see in here, this is the app. This is the ID here. Oh, right. How do you do that? So here's the ID. That's just the one you're going to put in the webhook. And then so in the domain, you can kind of put whatever you want, but it will call these rules, or this one right here, and this one right here. Those are for the text and the call. So this one's for the voice, so you can call it. You're not really going to be needing that for this lab, but this part for the text messages, this is where you want to put the webhook. And so basically, you can send a text. So this is my Twilio number here. So I can send a text. And the way I have my rules set up here is, so this is the domain, but it also looks for this in the body. So I can send, oh, where to go? I can send the text here. So that, as if this were my phone, I can send this on my phone also. So you can send this text, and it should just send a response. Oh, right. And so it says hello read. So in my rule here, I just say in this domain with this in the body, and you can do regular expressions, so you can be looking for specific things. And then once I get in there, I just pull the what's in the body right here, and then I just pretty much send it back. And in KRL we have modules. So this is kind of a module setup, so you can just easily call, send a text message. So you don't have to really handle any of the nitty-gritty of Twilio and any of that stuff. And so that's pretty much the simple concept of using Twilio. And yeah. What's that? What do you mean that actually knows the word Twilio? This right here? Yeah, so this is saying select when Twilio, so it's saying when the event is basically coming from Twilio, and then on this domain, which I gave that domain here, on SMS. So it knows on the Twilio event with this domain and the body of I sent my name, right? And then
how does it know it came from Twilio and how does it know the body?
it just does it. It's KRL. It's the module.
Twilio is the domain, and that's built into KRL.
Right.
And the format of that webhook that he gave Twilio is what Kinetics recognizes.
So Kinetic's doing all that work in the background. It recognizes that it's coming from Twilio.
Okay, that was my
Yeah, just magically in your head, it just happens. So you just write Twilio, and you can write whatever domain you want, and whatever you want to look for.
And so how does it know the body of the message?
Well, this is also built into, or which part? This part, right? Yeah, this.
Top part. Select one.
Which part?
Yeah, so there's the same thing. So there's an event parameter called body with vector B, and you can also use that in the select expression to say the body parameter has to match this string or regular expression.
So like bodies like echo keyword for
Yeah,
Well, for
it's a parameter.
right.
Just because Twilio calls it body, that's why.
So it's another built-in thing for KRL. So you could just say in the body, I want to find this, whatever that might be.
So Twilio sends this parameter called body, and Carol says, you say Carol, okay,
Well,
checking the body.
I don't.
Right.
Right. Basically. Yeah. And
So
then,
if body's not there, it just doesn't fire. It doesn't.
well, it's always there. There's a content that's being sent. So you send a text message, it could be blank, right?
But I'm saying like if you put some parameter that doesn't exist,
Oh,
like tail.
right. Then it wouldn't work. Just a problem issue would happen or something. Just wouldn't work probably. And then
And so how do you know how to choose which parameters from different things being sent to? Well, yeah, but so how do you know like what the keywords are for? So if some other company sends me a message or
well, first off, we know it's going to be Twilio, right? So we're already stating, we're using this, and we're just kind of building our way out here, and then we're like, this is the domain of that Twilio event, and this is what's within the body of that. So we're kind of identifying it as we go down the line. So if someone else sends to a message, plus they don't probably have our webhook to send a
does it
message.
seem like JSON underneath?
Twilio uses XML, but Arrow does all the heavy lifting of converting that to event parameters like this.
Right.
So you don't have to worry about it.
Right.
That's one nice thing about Twilio. It's abstract.
Yeah. You just say use this, do this. And so this is a simple, and then you can even do voice. I can do this example.
You may want to call on your phone because the volume is muted.
Oh, is it?
Screencast.
I'll try calling him. See if that works. I think this should work.
Hello CS462. I hope you're liking the class up to this point.
So that's pretty much everything I wrote here, right? And I just selected woman's voice. Let's select a man's voice. So it just handles phone calls and text messages and things like that. And so there's a lot of different things you can do. But basically in the project, you're just going to be sending a text message to your driver, and then the driver is going to respond with that text message.
So you can say with text or so how do you say text?
What's that? How do you,
Okay, so that's the bottom. Yeah.
right. Here's how you send the text message. Because we received it right here. This is the return that I sent back. And so that's pretty much so you can send events. You can do all kinds of stuff with this. Like this is the action part where you can send events. You can do pretty much anything you want to do once you receive the event. And so that's kind of the Twilio stuff. Do you have any questions about the Twilio aspect of it all?
So there's only one driver gets one Twilio account?
Yeah, pretty much. I think you probably could create more phone numbers, couldn't you?
Well,
I don't know if
you
the-
only need one phone number for your
Right, for the app, right?
Because you can talk to all the drivers' phones from this same Twilio account.
So how's that working?
So Reed registered with Twilio and got his account and linked it to this app, and then all the drivers that use this app, it can use the same Twilio account to talk to them.
Right. So this is the flower shop, basically. That's building out an app that can talk to all their drivers.
Okay.
Does that make sense? What's that? Right.
So the driver has to give his number to his personal event network, and you'd store that in an entity variable probably.
So this driver gets a different number or the same number?
Well, every driver has his own phone, but the app will always talk as the same number. So it'll always go out as this number. So every driver will see that number when it gets a text,
Yeah.
but the return just comes from the driver's phone to the same place.
Yeah.
And Kinetics does some nice things with managing state. So if you're having an SMS conversation, as it were, the messages going back and forth, it knows where they were coming from and which entity variables to tie that to. So that's kind of nice.
So how does there's two event networks? How does the Twilio work? Both of them?
What do you mean by?
Well, no, the Twilio stuff would be in the same app as the Foursquare stuff. It would all
Right.
it'd all be cooperating.
You can just create different rules in your same exact network or personal event network.
Right, yeah, but there's two event networks, right?
The flower shop and the drivers, yeah.
Yeah. So the flower shop still sends. So each flower shop has their own Twilio account.
No, the flower shop doesn't need Twilio, but the driver's personal event number does. Because the flower shop's just saying, I've got a delivery, but the driver's personal event network is saying, okay, text the driver and tell him about it. The flower shop doesn't do that part. Did that make sense? Here, go back. Go back to the diagram.
Right. Where's your
command tab? That's the first tab.
Yeah.
All the Twilio stuff's happening here. But the flower shop never knows about it necessarily.
But doesn't the flower shop need to notify people?
That's what this is.
Okay.
This is the only thing the flower shop does. It's raised admin. And then this guy figures out, okay, that means I need to correlate all these things and text the driver.
So they raise an event and then they send a text message.
For each driver.
Yes. Yes.
Right. And then the drivers can respond.
Wait, so it seems like the driver website knows about all the networks and the drivers.
Yeah. Think about it that way.
How else would you do that?
Well, yeah, every driver has an account on the website. And his account is like this virtual network account. Every account is a cloud. Phil's diagram was better if he had multiple things all stacked on top of each other with the seal. That's probably a better way to represent it than this. If that makes more sense to you.
Yeah.
Is it good?
I'll work on it.
You'll chew on that?
Yeah.
I think our time's up in this room.
Yeah.
So. All right, thanks for coming.
You get to keep our video account in the
Yep.